Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vivek Sankaran. I'm the President CEO of Albertsons Companies. I'm delighted that you could make some time to spare to join us on this very, very important topic. Before I go further, I do want to say, take a moment and thank John Wang. John, thank you for everything you do for our community and for your passion to continue to make a difference and for bringing us together so often. Thank you for that. And thank you to my fellow panelists, Seth Kaufman, Roy Weathers, and our moderator, Michael Park. Thank you so much, guys. Look forward to our discussion a little later. In early December, I got an email from John, and he mentioned in that email this roundtable. He asked if I would participate. And he said at that time, it was a working title. It said, "In It Together, How Minority Businesses, Corporations, and Employees Can Rebuild Communities." And as I reflect on the last several months, I cannot think of more apt bookends, right? This notion of being in it together and rebuild communities. And I want to just take a moment and reflect on that with you, just my personal experience over the last several months. You can have your own perspectives, on what the it is in it together. But I think we'll all agree that the it is tough. And I will tell you that it's going to be tough for a while longer. And when people ask me how our business is doing, I remind them very quickly that in the last several months, there is no lucky side to business. There are only busy sides and not so busy sides. And the not so busy side, if you're part of that, you'd have seen it's dramatically affected incomes of companies, of families, and people and professions. And many service sectors, which are full of small businesses, and you know them, that employ many minorities, have been very disproportionately affected during the last several months. And I want you to imagine if you were working in a restaurant or in a hotel, just in the hospitality sector, and you depended on weekly income and tips. I bet it is incredibly difficult. It was difficult before the pandemic. It's probably doubly so at this time. Unfortunately, I think it'll take months, if not years, for many of these sectors to recover to pre-pandemic levels. And I've been on the busy side of this pandemic. And, we feel temporarily relieved. We feel gratified somewhat that we've been able to be of service to the communities that we operate in over the last several months. And we certainly are at the Albertsons Companies. But I'll tell you that it's never lost on us that the not so busy sides of this economy are also our customers. Yeah, we're a $65 billion company, but we make that up $30 at a time when people come through our stores, and they come from all walks of life. So we're deeply aware that we are in it together. And that's the first bookend now of the statement. The second bookend of the statement, which I think is also so apt, is this notion of rebuilding communities. And I'll tell you a story. You all recall several months ago, after the killing of George Floyd, our country went through a lot of distress, a lot of deep distress, a lot of unrest. And some of those demonstrations turned into riots. And a couple of our stores in Chicago were very badly damaged as a result. And I got videos at that time of people looting our stores and the damage live when it was happening. And frankly, it was a very helpless feeling at that time. But the next day was dramatically different. It was eye-opening for me. So the next morning, I got pictures of just dozens of people in our parking lots, cleaning the parking lots. And your first instinct when you're cleaning graffiti from the walls, they were just people cleaning the store, and your first instinct is, oh, hey, our associates are back there cleaning the stores. And I learned, it turns out that they were our customers. They were our customers who had showed up the next morning to clean the parking lots, to remove the graffiti. And honestly, it gave me goosebumps. I still get goosebumps talking about it, And when I went back, I went to the stores next week, and people would walk up to me, and they'd walk up to all of us who had these badges on, and they'd say, "Thank you for opening the store." And In fact, it was so odd because I should be thanking them for coming back and shopping with us. But I just learned that it reinforced something for me that week. We at the Albertsons companies, we always think of ourselves as being stewards of the communities that we operate in. That we've got to play a stewardship role in that very local community around our store, and it just absolutely reinforced it for me on that day. Right? It just reinforces for me that businesses like us, yes, we're a $65 billion company, but we operate in small pockets, and we should be making a difference to those communities. That, in essence, is the heart of what I believe is our ESG agenda. And we're committed to rebuilding our communities around our stores. And we have been doing that before the pandemic. As an example, in that same division, Joe Losco in Chicago, we host events where we bring minority-owned companies and celebrate their brands. We'll have demonstrations with them. And then during the pandemic, we redoubled it. We worked, for example, with breweries in Vermont who were going out of business because they were serving restaurants and brought them into our stores. We worked with fishermen in Massachusetts to get fish that would go to restaurants in our stores. And what's fascinating is if you think that we are rebuilding our communities alone, I want to, what continues to, it just is amazing for me that our customers in 2020 donated $70 million through the cash register, $1 at a time, $5 at a time, for our what we call our Nourishing Neighbors campaign, which is to serve the hungry in the communities that we operate in. So so I love that second bookend of rebuilding communities together. So I hope all of you see the power of those two messages. Thank you, John, for teeing that up. I look forward to the discussion in the panel. And Michael, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, terrific. Thanks, Vivek. We have a great panel today, and I'm so excited to be joined by my fellow panelists here. I just wanted to maybe say up front, we do want to make this interactive. So to the extent that people have questions, please add them in the chat. I will do my best to integrate them into the questions so we can make this as interactive as possible. Let me do a very quick round. This is a very difficult group to adequately give respect to in their bio, but I will do my best to describe who we have here. My name is Michael Park. I'm a senior partner based in New York with McKinsey & Company. I lead our Asian affinity group as well as lead our organization practice. With me, I have Seth Kaufman. He's the CEO of Hennessy in North America. He's responsible for the development, growth, and business vision for their iconic set of brands in champagne, wines, and spirits. I think you see some of them right behind him. And before that was a member of the PepsiCo leadership team with a number of roles there. Just going around the horn a little bit, Vivek, I think you heard, he's CEO of Albertsons Companies, has led a number of roles in that company as well as at PepsiCo as well. We'll get into more of his background. And then Roy Weathers, who's the vice chair of PricewaterhouseCoopers, member of the US leadership team, and recently appointed as their societal engagement and policy solutions leader, and has been in and around this topic quite a bit. We're going to do a Q&A, and I'll lead a panel discussion. But before that, I'm going to just get us to a video, which I think you will all find exciting, and then we'll dive right in.
Hello and welcome to the Asian American Business Roundtable. It's an honor to be here supporting our AAPI community and our minority-owned small businesses during times like these. Now, I, of course, do not want to, and I will not sugarcoat this. This past year has been tough for just about every member of our community and other communities that have gone through difficult times. The pandemic, the viral pandemic, we've had a racial pandemic, we have an economic pandemic that has affected each and all of us in different ways. And there's a fourth pandemic that we're living through at the moment, what I have been calling the selfish pandemic. And you can see the symptoms everywhere of this all around us. The rise in hate crimes, 2,100 reported between March and June against Asian Americans alone. rudeness online, people just not caring about other people, and the words that are chosen and used. Now, this year's viral pandemic has only exacerbated the symptoms, but it's also helped to bring out the stories of heroes fighting the selfish pandemic, like our care heroes or essential workers who have put their lives on the line to help. Small businesses and their essential workers have played a key role that has not gone unnoticed. Many of your businesses, many people you know, and their employees have been those frontline heroes, caring for all of us and bringing us the things that we need to survive now that we have had to live through this. Now, though my reporting, as I look back at it over the past 15 years, I've seen how the over 1 million minority-owned small businesses have helped to fight this selfish pandemic. I write about some of this in stories that I've reported on in my book, my new book, Enough About Me, that's out in March. There's a story of a small butcher shop in Ferguson, Missouri. In 2014, my work sent me to Ferguson to cover the unrest that occurred after the shooting of Michael Brown, an unarmed Black teen. It was a minority-owned butcher shop built lovingly over 9 years. Now, the story is not necessarily a good one because the store was vandalized by its own community. Not only the first night, but also the second night and then the third night as well. And the owner showed me the damage, which he estimated to be, at about $600,000 or more. This is a small butcher shop. This is expensive. But every morning, this owner boarded up whatever had gotten damaged and reopened the store the next day. And so I asked him, why do you keep opening? And, people were looting, they were emptying the shelves and trying to set his store on fire. He said, I have customers who need me. They don't make a lot of money. This is the place they come to get the things they need. I want to be here for them, even though I don't have a lot. And then I repeated my question again, why do you come in? And the owner, he responded similarly. The majority of the restaurants on the strip had already closed and boarded up completely with plywood. He had the same reason and answer as before. This is my job. This is my community, and I'm a member of it. Minority-owned small businesses understand what they mean to their communities. It's why time and time again, small businesses have been there for their communities when they are needed most. Like the owner of that butcher shop, Muhammad. He showed up every day. And that is a selflessness of small businesses. It's what helps to fight this idea of a selfish pandemic. All that many of you do each and every day, we see it and we appreciate it because we know it's tough, especially now. Today, these small businesses are now seen for what they are, pillars of all of our communities in times of need. They now need our help, and the Asian American Business Development Center has helped small businesses do that, to get them back on their feet through their recent announcement of Project Rebuild, which connects minority small businesses with corporations and employee resource groups, selflessly willing to lend a hand by providing technical assistance to these small businesses in need. AABDC, along with 100 Black men and the Hispanic Federation, have collectively awarded $3 million in grants to the Asian American, Black, and Hispanic communities, along with the kind help of many organizations, including those related to Hennessy. Congratulations to everybody at AABDC and all the organizations that have helped to put together this aid that's so important. We hope that you will enjoy today's event and the conversations that will be had. And we thank you for taking the time to support this very important group of small minority-owned businesses. That you being here today shows that you believe in what they have done and what they will do to build our greater communities in the future. Thanks a lot.
Terrific. Excellent. Well, let's get into it. There's obviously a lot to cover. And I'll just start with you, Seth. One of the things that we titled this panel was about steering organizations and communities from crisis to recovery. You want to say a few words on your organization and what you all have done as you've gone through this pandemic, still going through the pandemic, and some of the actions that you have taken and are taking and the topics we've been talking about.
Yeah, and maybe I'll one internal thought bubble and then external. Internally, one of the biggest things last year and into this year is constant and ongoing and open communication. And we really engaged our employee base in hearing what they were struggling with, and did a series starting in the beginning of the crisis of weekly town halls, which then became biweekly, and now we do them every month. And what I'd say, Michael, is obviously, we together helped steer the business through, but also if you think about the crisis of, COVID and how it had disproportionately impacted minority communities, and then the horrific murder of George Floyd right around the same time, and the dialogues that created internally, we really had an opportunity to engage our employee base in what they wanted to do and how they wanted to make a difference. And we had really, really good, from open sharing forums to bringing in professors to, literally cover with the company the history of Black America in one case, and creating good open dialogues. But, for us internally, that was a dialogue, that was support, that was kind of navigating the team through. But a lot of our brands have throughout time really supported different minority communities in a very, very meaningful way. And kind of with that in mind, our biggest brand, Hennessy, and Richard just alluded to this, it kicked off a program called Unfinished Business. And the whole idea of Unfinished Business was that because Black communities, Asian American communities, Latinx communities were hit the hardest from the pandemic, not only with sickness, with deaths, but also the small businesses and the access to capital, we wanted to solve that and kind of play our part. So we partnered with this incredible organization. We partnered with 100 Black Men. We partnered with Hispanic Federation. And actually now it's up to $5 million that we've awarded. But for us, it's not just money. We have helped, so the capital has gone to 1,631 businesses so far. But we've offered mentoring to thousands and thousands more. And for us, it's really about helping these businesses that are staples in their community survive the crisis and maybe get more of those businesses through than they would have been able to get through without our partnership. We continue to bring funding to the program because we think it's really, really important. So for instance, we're doing a Lunar New Year virtual event. All the proceeds are going to go directly to this program. Our partners, Nas, the rapper, the NBA, are helping with dollars for this. And then we just struck a deal with London Business School, where we're going to have MBA students actually on kind of pro bono consulting projects for some of these small businesses. So for us, Michael, the energy internally and creating the open dialogue about the role we wanted to play connected very seamlessly to what we were doing in the community externally. And look, it's only 1,631 businesses that we've helped with capital, a few thousand more in mentoring. But for us, even though that's not these massive, massive numbers, there's real people in real communities that are positively impacted by that. And, I would say it also helps in a very, very material way, the employee engagement in the company, because folks feel really, really good about the role we're playing.
Oh, that's fantastic. Maybe build on that, Vivek, maybe to you. You spoke at the outset and a little bit in our prep call, and I'll paraphrase poorly, how you saw kind of engagement with communities as such a business imperative. Would love to hear some of the lessons learned as you all have been very active at Albertsons with your communities, and what are you seeing you all have done well, and what are some of the things that you want to see more of?
Michael, to me, that it begins with our belief. Our core belief is that, while we are a large corporation, our early journey was all about building stores for the community, and we still try to maintain that, right? We know that what we need to do in a particular store should serve the community just around it, and that it's not just the commercial side of it, but we need to also be giving back to that community. That's always been our mode of operation. I think during the pandemic, it just took a completely different level, right? First of all, there are our early days of the pandemic, our focus was primarily on safety of our associates, but also the safety of customers. We are such a central part of the food supply chain, right? And And so people had to come to our stores, and we double down on learning about safety and managing the safety of our associates and our customers. And then there was an issue around food supply, because if you think about it, back then, our country is so beautifully optimized for food that goes to restaurants and food that goes to grocery stores. It's beautifully optimized. And when you have a break in one of those, you end up with a lot of supply on one side and lack of supply on the other, which was what was happening through March, April, May. And what we learned is that at the end of the day, a lot of the people who are supplying restaurants and et cetera are small businesses. They are somebody who distributes the fish to the restaurant, somebody who distributes produce to a restaurant. And so we started getting whoever we can to help us and started connecting them up to our stores. And so we'd get big bags of chicken, we'd trim it and package it so that it might be ready for a family. So we would do a lot of those types of things. And then at the same time, as we knew that people are losing jobs in the community, we set aside more than $53 million of cash ourselves. And as I mentioned in my opening, customers started donating cash to give right back to that community. And we allowed the stores to find the places to give that money. It's hard for me from Boise to determine who needs help in Oregon. And so our stores did that. And so it's amplified this notion of being extremely local and solving those very fundamental needs in different parts of the country where we operate.
That's really great. I mean, I agree. You have a particularly granular view just based on your footprint. So that is, you have an incredible connection to customers that way. Roy, to you, you obviously run a very different kind of business and in professional services, but with an awful lot of employees and obviously operating in a lot of parts of the U.S. Just any lessons, and how has PwC responded during this time? Anything you'd like to share in lessons learned?
Yeah, so thank you, Michael. And as the other panelists has mentioned, we first started internally, everything from safety to listening. We have about 60,000 employees in the US. And as you would imagine, there was a large outcry in terms of what everyone was feeling as the pandemic was coming through, as the George Floyd killing occurred. And we just spent a lot of time listening. But we started about 4 years ago with an organization called CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And 4 years ago, we set that up. If you recall, there was a lot happening in Texas with police shootings, et cetera. And so we set that up to bring CEOs together, primarily focused on what can you do inside your organizations to make things better. And so we found ourselves post George Floyd with the pandemic going on, asking, that was 4 years ago. We now have about 1,600 CEOs and signatory corporations that have signed up. We said, what else could we do? And so my new role is CEO Action for Racial Equity, which is really focused on harnessing the power of corporations to think about external events and policy, public policy that support all the great things that we're talking about. Because the truth of the matter is, all the great things we're doing need to be better supported at the federal, state, and city level with policies, whether it's small business in the small business development area and other areas for, I would say, the underrepresented minority community or emerging majority community, I should probably say. And so our focus is hand in hand with the corporate community, focused on public policy that will make a difference and support. And it's everything from what you're seeing in the CARES Act to the new administration now thinking about racial equity and what laws need to be impacted. But we're spending a lot of time. We set up a fellowship. So to date, we have about 250 fellows from 150 corporations, and we're still looking for fellows. So if you're out there and you're a corporation and you're not involved, we'd love to get you involved. Where fellows are coming on for 1 to 2 years, and we're working collectively together. The thing that we know is when corporate America rolls up its sleeves to help each other and make a difference, we get things done. You've heard great examples of that. The other thing we know is corporate America drives policy in this country. Typically, it's in our industry or our sector, or things that we're worried about within associations. But what we're asking corporate America to do is also help us focus on the right policies that we need in place throughout this country as it relates to race and equity, to further support all the great work we're doing. And so we can unpack that some more, but we're among a number of other things that we're doing, our employees directly giving. We've decided we think we can make a difference by underpinning and looking at the policies that the listeners so rightfully need to support their businesses as they continue to thrive and grow.
That's great. And I just will make another plug. Obviously, if people have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to integrate them. I got a stack of them over here, a metaphorical one at least. So we'll have a lot to go through either way, but I do want to make sure we get the opportunity to take the audience's input. I'll open this up for everybody on this panel. All of you picked up on ways that your organizations are driving change, et cetera. In some ways, if I put my cynical hat on, these actions aren't, have been done before in some ways in the past, and these problems have been with us for a long time. It wasn't like this year was the only year we've had issues with injustice and so on. What's different? What gives you hope that this time is different? Seth, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll
Yeah.
start. I think at least for me, and this was my first year with this company, so it's hard to say specifically what was different at this company before or after. But if I think about the company, if I think about the world, I think the level of crisis recognized almost universally is at a really good place, I think, which is a really weird thing to say, but I see more companies holding themselves accountable than ever before. I see more employees and more individuals in the communities speaking up louder than they ever have before. And I see more action and movement forward. I think, and maybe this is also a cynical view, Michael, but we're coming from a world of chest pounding on little things to doing big things and not necessarily always talking about what those big things are. And for me, that is what is materially different, and all in a very, very positive way, which hopefully leads to much, much more progress on many fronts.
Yeah, I'll just add to Seth's point. Honestly, I believe we're in a once in a generation window. The perfect storm of the pandemic, I would say the accumulation of what's been happening that was flashed on our screen with the killing of George Floyd and kept playing over and over. And what's been exposed in terms of the small businesses, for example, that we're talking about today, and I talked about policies and the policies that don't support those businesses in the way that they should. And sometimes it's I don't come at this that everyone's ill intent. Sometimes it's a matter of focusing, understanding whether the policies are making a difference or not. Are we achieving what we want to achieve? And if we're not, rolling up our sleeves and doing something different. So I think we're in a once in a generational moment. The other thing I think is unique for us is globally, we've been forced to think about our businesses differently, all together, almost at the same time. And so when you think about innovation, when you think about technology, when you think about what we're all doing to make sure our businesses are able to thrive in a safe way, we're bringing forth what I believe are ways of doing business that will stay with us for generations to come. And candidly, and if I can put a positive spin on it, I think there's an opportunity for many in the minority community to skip the line, if you will, relative to how you operate a business, how you think about engaging your customers, how you think about engaging your employees, how you think about reaching the world, if you will. We're learning a lot. And I think we can skip the line in terms of our advancement. And that's a very, very positive outcome from all of this.
Roy, I really like the notion of a change to the right policies, but then there is also things we as leaders within our companies can do. And Michael, for me, my attention to racial injustice went up when back in 2016, I was running Frito-Lay. And 2016, if you recall, was a very tough year. A lot of young Black men shot, and the police shooting in Dallas, and so on and so forth. And what's changed for me this year is the following, which is the pattern I was in was that my focus would go up when the events happened. Okay, and I'm realizing now that my focus should stay here so the events don't happen. That you need to have a different mindset. And so personally, it's changed that my job is to keep this focus up in this organization, and I'm in at least the world I see, so that these events don't happen. And if all of us, I think, did that, then we'll be in a much better place a few years from now. It's going to be a tough journey. It's going to be a long journey, but we cannot let the events drive focus.
Yeah. No, I think that's really well put, Vivek. I think it is interesting to see. It has to be more than just thoughts and prayers that when some bad headline comes out, it has to be sustained. One interesting statistic that the organizers of this event brought to my attention, which I guess I implicitly kind of felt, but was interesting to see in numbers, 71% of employees, generally speaking, right, place more trust in companies to respond to racial injustice than the government, which was, I guess, 36%. So roughly double, right? More trust in companies to drive the change than the government. And perhaps without going into why the government number may be so low, if you think about why the number is much higher in your companies, maybe just talk to me about what have you seen of your employees? What are they insisting from you as leaders? How have you seen that dialogue change over the last 10, 20 years?
Maybe I'll kick that off and throw it over to you, Seth. So we know of those statistics, and on many levels, it's not surprising because the very employees that are a part of our business to carry out our business and to serve customers and clients, they see the effectiveness of it, right? They see the success of our clients when you focused on data-driven solutions. They see what happens when you focus on the human element within our clients. And so for us at PwC, it translates that, well, if you think about race and how do we improve a societal well-being, let's apply some of the very same tactics and approaches and methodologies that we do in our day in, day out life. That's number one. I think the other thing is and I think this is a very positive thing, just over the years, the generations that have come through, the willingness to raise their voice and the expectation that where they work and who they're connected to in terms of their careers, the things that we do outside of our organizations matter. If you go back to the BRT, the Business Roundtable, and it's probably been about a year ago that Jamie Dimon at the time was leading, and they started to talk about the other stakeholders that matter to the business community over and above the direct ones where there may be a more financial link. That voice is loud and clear inside our organization for sure. And so it's not surprising, that percentage is not surprising. And candidly, they're holding all of us as leaders to a high level of expectation to step up, get involved, and make a difference.
Hey, I'll just build on that because I agree entirely. And I think this is a beautiful thing about the talent makeup in companies now. And as these younger generations become a larger and larger proportion of the workforce, this is going to scale more and more. And the simple way, at least that I think about it, is, a couple decades ago, there was the work life and the home life and everything outside of that. And now those things are absolutely not separate at all. And especially young employees hold leaders accountable, hold their peers accountable, hold the company accountable. And it is a beautiful thing because it drives action, it drives investment, and I think it drives progress in the communities at a time when it's really, really hard for government to get stuff done because of just pure divisiveness. So totally agree with Roy. And I think it's a beautiful thing about the talent makeup of companies today.
Yeah, and I didn't know the stat, Michael, but it doesn't surprise me, right? It doesn't surprise me. My sense is businesses are realizing uh, that it's good for business. I mean, just look at us on this panel. You know, we've all got different memories, and I can try and describe to you what Diwali is like for in India, but if you haven't lived it, you'd never know. And it's hard to market to me if you don't know that, right? And if you look at America, America is a lot like the screen today, and I think we are all realizing it's good for business, which I think is a very good thing. It's not only the right thing to do; it's also really good for business.
No, I think that's really well put. You know, it just as a personal aside, I was talking to some of our friends in the entertainment industry, right? And as you all know, there's been a lot of movement in that world to represent new majority communities in a much different light. A superhero movie with Black people in it. Who would have thought, right? A romance with a male Asian lead. Like, who would have thought? And in one way, people I think have been surprised that these movies and things have done quite well. On the other hand, you're saying, guys, how are you surprised? This is where the country is. Of course, So I think that point about this is good for business, it also is the right thing to do, is it really does resonate. Let me take a few questions here we've been getting in the chat. The three of you represent, I guess, McKinsey too, kind of national, if not international brands, right? In some ways, it could be easy to say, oh, these are these big corporations. How do you connect and think about making your brand, your company resonate at the truly local level, that we don't often think about, but that's where a lot of the community is?
In our business, it's a necessity, Michael. We are in the food business, and by definition, people eat different food, and so our approach to that is it's not so much the brand, but it is the brand, but what we carry inside it. And so if you go to one of our pick a market, and if you go to one of our stores, you'll find that the assortment starts getting highly tailored for the market around it, the neighborhood around it. And a store 3 miles away, I tell people this example in Seattle, 3 miles away, one store carries a lot more white onions, the other one carries a lot more red onions, because Indian people eat a lot more red onions, and so we adjusted with that very local mindset, and that helps, but that's essential to our business.
Hey, I'll just build, and I'll take a specific example. So Hennessy is a global brand. And this is always a struggle with global brands, and huge in China, and very, very ambitious Chinese New Year programming each and every year. We activate against Lunar New Year. This year, we're doing it in a virtual sense, but I went through 2 weeks ago with the Hennessy team. Really, really clear point of view from that team on how the global insights actually are quite different than Asian American millennials in particular. And they pivoted the program to be able to connect around food, music, entertainment that really, really drives that. So in my mind, Michael, you can leverage the power of a global company, the power of a global brand, and some of the tools. But you have to tweak based upon local insights, very similar to what Vivek just said on onions in one store versus another store. And our programming here looks quite different than it does anywhere else in the world. And it's specifically designed to connect and engage with the consumer here and hopefully resonate without disrespecting the global point of view of the Hennessy brand.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. And Michael, I'm sure it's true of McKinsey. I mean, two things. One, we have employees that are local in terms of the makeup, the diversity, and we take a lot by listening to our 60,000 employees. But the bigger thing for us is we're a professional services organization. So we live through our clients. I was just listening to Vivek and Seth, describe their businesses. It's important that we appreciate what helps your companies be successful. And so we take a lot of our learnings through our companies, through the companies that we serve and we provide services for, and see it firsthand. Like our success is tied to our client success. And so that's how we live it. That's how we see it. And for us, because again, like McKinsey and others, we see it at such a broad scale, global scale, our ability to help companies sort that out and figure all that out is what we do every day. And so that's how we bring it to life.
That resonates for sure. How do you humanize what we're doing, right? I think is a big key. There's a question in here as well. I might just take a riff on it. We have a lot of people in this in the participant group representing different slices of companies like the ones that are represented here. What advice would you give, a younger executive, colleague in one of your firms? How do you get more involved? It may be a bit of a gap between where they are and the CEO suite. How do they connect into some of these programs and the types of things the companies are trying to do? What advice would you give for a younger person in their career?
I'll start. I'd say the first thing is to recognize that if you want to be involved and you're feeling that way, you're not the only one. And most organizations, and I will just say it's hard to recruit and retain talent and function in a very effective way if you're not having some level of conversation around the challenges that we see in society. If you're not supporting your employees to organize in ways to address and support it. So seek out. The biggest thing for me, I would just ask folks two things. One, be curious. We come to this not knowing everything, but if you come into it with a curious mind and a willingness to roll up your sleeves and get engaged, you find welcoming perspective. The other I would say is when it comes to having conversations around race and what does it mean in society and inside our organizations, I like to think of it in three ways. People typically get comfortable in three ways: head, heart, wallet. Right? Head, theoretically, what goals are we trying to achieve? Heart, is it the right thing to do? Do it because it's the right thing to do. Or wallet, it's good for the business. And I always say, be accepting of all three. None of them are wrong. Come at it from the perspective that gives you the most comfort. Just focus and get engaged.
I love the notion of curiosity, Roy. I find first, my advice would be speak up, but also be willing to listen. And I think all of us have to get to a place where when you start talking about race, I think we all worry we're going to say the wrong thing, and that pulls us back. I'd say just let it go, listen, ask questions, be incredibly curious both ways. And I think that changes the tone and the tenor of conversations and the tenor of the culture.
I love it. I agree with both Vivek and Roy. And I would just add, part of what they're saying, I think, is this careful balance for employees of passion and empathy. Understanding kind of what someone else is feeling and when might be the time to push versus when might be the time to say it in a different way. But you can't lose that passion and, speaking up and driving your point of view. I can think of a couple of examples when, fairly junior employees came to me with a strong point of view on something and didn't see the connections of how we get it done. And naturally over time, this stuff got done, things got to the marketplace or they were really, really proud to celebrate. So this kind of combination of be passionate about your point of view, but also empathetic of not everyone feels exactly the same way. So you might have to, push harder in one setting versus another.
Yeah, I think that one thing that has happened is we've had these discussions in companies and institutions like the ones that represented here is a opportunity to have a dialogue that hasn't been there before, right? And yeah, if we can make the most of it, have people truly connect, reflect that, hey, you probably aren't alone in many cases, or there are other folks in the organization that feel like you, that can hopefully become a way to channel that energy. So I love that point. Each of you in your organizations, I'm guessing, have a large Asian community as well as your employees. I'm curious, any reflections and thoughts about what you've seen your Asian affinity groups or employee groups do well, and any challenge you would provide them?
So I'll kick off. We do. We have a large aging professional community inside PwC, and one of the things that's been incredibly helpful as a leader is hearing what are the things that make a difference to them as professionals and how to get engaged. The other thing that was incredibly impactful for us was in the early days of the pandemic, where there was just so much horrible language driven toward the Asian community, pausing, bringing it to the attention of the full firm. So all 60,000 of our professionals in the US saying this matters, and giving a voice to why it matters, and just slowing down enough and not moving past it because of the pandemic and all the things were going on. I found that, again, going back to curious, the point of being curious, I found that, and I know other leaders found that incredibly helpful, not only to us as leaders, but to the organization overall.
I'll build. I think one of the things that I'm most inspired by is that given the diversity within the Asian American community in my company, how much education sharing goes on within that group to help others understand points of view, et cetera, just within that community as much as they would outside of that community, because there is so much obvious diversity within that community. And whether it's in ERG sharing, other company forums, that kind of, really, really open sharing, education, understanding, I think is making everyone understand, and again, increasing empathy to the different needs of different parts of that community.
Yeah, I would. I love our group, and we know we can be much larger, but I love them because they unabashedly celebrate their Asianness and pull everybody into it. It's great. It's just it's really great, and that energy is infectious.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is, and back to the point you all were making about some of the things that have happened generationally, I think some of our younger employees who don't see this just as a nice to have, but almost a moral imperative, and are going to hold leaders to account, have added real energy to these types of groups. And I think, I actually think it's making a huge difference. Leaders around the world, and it sounds like you three are really paying attention. I think that makes a big difference. We have a number of people in this group, in the participant list, who are representatives of smaller, independent businesses, right? What advice or what perspective would you provide in terms of either ways your companies and institutions can work with smaller businesses, and just ways that we can broker the connection a little bit between the large companies that have lots of capacity, reach, and scale, and then the smaller businesses that are in all of our communities that are really at the front line, so to speak. I would just love any reflections and thoughts there.
Yeah, I could start. I'll go back to unfinished business, this program that we did as an example here. Recognizing that sometimes there is a huge divide between these small businesses and companies like ours. It's why we engaged with this organization, why we engaged with the Hispanic Federation, why we engaged with 100 Black Men, in order to help us identify the businesses most in need of support, provide the capital and the mentoring. So if I spin that into advice, yes, when there's direct connections that you can make with corporations, excellent, and do that. But when there's not, being active and engaged with organizations like Asian American Business Development Center is really, really important, because there's connectivity that groups like this provide to big corporations that don't always have the visibility. So that the very effective intermediaries in this respect can really, really help close that divide, in my mind.
Yeah, I would first, I think, recognize that it's going to be tough for a little longer, right? It's not going to be an easy fix anytime soon. To mentally prepare for that. And then, at least as it relates to businesses like ours, please reach out locally. To the extent there is anything related to food, and if you're in our where our stores are, we want those communities to thrive. And I think reaching out to companies like us, and I'm not speaking just for myself, I can imagine that many of us in the larger retailers need others around us to thrive and take that mindset and reach out.
Yeah, I would just add, so from two perspectives. One, and I'll go back to the policy side, which is something that we cannot lose sight on. We'll get through this period of time, and Vivek, your points of ebb and flow in terms of focus. If we don't nail down some of the policy opportunities, we might be back there. So I would say CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion is 1,600 companies. It's all the big companies you would imagine, but not just for the big companies. There's a lot of sharing there. It's a platform of connectivity. And so I'd invite you to go there. CEO Action for Racial Equity.com is focused on grassroots and where in the communities can we focus from a policy perspective. We need to hear from organizations, so you can find us there. I would just say internally in our business, we're a heavy consulting business. We have small and private company services that we offer. Last but not least, we've all sort of been in the same box, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and using innovation, becoming creative. And Vivek, your point around partnering, I love how you were leveraging the stores to bring in some of the businesses that lost their distribution channel. You created another one. I think that's huge. It's a huge key. We're offering and providing that level of advice to big companies, and I think it works just as well for smaller businesses that are trying to find their way through this tumultuous time.
Terrific. Well, I think we're getting close to the end here, and I do want to allow you all to have a bit of a last word in this. And so I'm going to do something dangerous and mix traditions a bit. The New Year's resolution tradition and Lunar New Year coming up in a week. I'll go around the horn. Just as you reflect and you think about the last year, and then you look ahead, and again, the title or the point of this panel was around how do you steer organizations and communities from crisis to recovery. I'd love to hear just a personal resolution. What are you going to do differently, or what are you thinking about doing with yourself and your leadership and your organization that you get excited about? I'll let you take it however you want to interpret it, but what's one thing that you're really committed to this year? And whoever wants to go first can go, and we'll go around the horn.
All right, I'll start. That's a big question because there's so much happening. I'll just personally, a year ago, I was running one of our 3 P&Ls, our tax business for the U.S. and Mexico. 15,000 people, multi-billion-dollar business, and was asked to take the business skills and point it toward societal, racial issues and public policy hand in hand with our clients. I honestly that was not on my radar to do a year ago. And for me, every day I wake up thinking about bringing that set of skills, and not just mine, but of our firm and of the many corporations out there that have eagerly jumped into this to the table to weigh in and solve some of this on the public policy side. That's where I am. That's what I wake up doing every day, amongst other things, serving clients. But that's my personal commitment. I've grown, I will tell you, just in the last 6 months of launching this thing immensely. And I'm many, many years, I won't give my age away, but many years in the corporate community doing this stuff. So that's where I'm personally focused, and our organization is focused, and many of our clients and other corporations.
Yeah, I'm done with this pandemic, Michael. I'm going to put the smile back. We want to put the smiles back in people. We need to have more fun. And I'm going to be an optimist. I think we've got a few more months of this, and the second half of this year is going to be putting the fun back in people.
Love that.
One resolution of mine is just to continue but accelerate how our commercial partnerships can also make a positive impact in the community. And there's a lot of partnerships that we have with leagues, with talent, with retailers, et cetera, where there are ideas coming up all the time of what we could do. And my resolution is really prioritizing those. So doing something right now, for example, thinking about retired NBA players that can't get work, and should we provide externships, and what does that look like? NBA is a huge partner of ours. So just those partnerships at scale, we can do both. We can drive the business and we can do great things in the community. So big resolution of mine.
That's great. No, I love the inspirational tone at the end here. And I think implicit in all this, and frankly, a resolution of mine too, is how do we use the platforms that we all have to keep advancing these topics that we feel are critical, and something that maybe we wouldn't have done 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But I think now time is of the essence. And Roy, to your point, this is the time. It's a window of opportunity. Gentlemen, I really appreciate all the time you all spent. I mean, obviously, we could go on for a few more hours if we wanted to, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. A huge thanks to this team and everybody else from the roundtable as well. I have a few end talking points that I need to that I've been instructed to give as well. We have an exciting set of other topics and panels like this. There's a CDO panel that's happening on Monday, February 8th. There is, a day 2, of course, that's happening as well on February the 8th. And then, I would also point to one of the reasons this group reached out to McKinsey was we recently published a report on the Asian American experience on COVID-19. For those of you who are interested, I'd take a look. And in the spirit of inspiration, one thing that's been interesting about the Asian American community is that while it has been disproportionately affected in a negative way in many ways, it's also been a disproportionate contributor if you think about everything from Asian Americans doing research and providing, healthcare, but food delivery, nursing, all sorts of ways that Asians have really stepped up during the last 12 months. And it's exciting to see in one place. And then obviously, if there's anybody who has input, questions, reactions, please do provide it to the organizers. I think everybody's always looking for feedback and wanting to make organizations and panels like this even more effective. So with that, I just want to wish everybody a happy, almost early Lunar New Year. Seth, Roy, Vivek, this was wonderful. Appreciate your candor and sharing your perspectives. And to everybody, I hope everybody's safe and stay well.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Michael. Thank you all.